Hi, welcome to episode 42, continuing our work with first species counterpoint, and now we're going to go first species counterpoint below, and we're going to use the same cantus firmus, and we'll just give a quick review of the rules, and then we're going to jump in. So basically, the rules are you have to write a good melody. Check out the last couple episodes to see what I mean by good in quotes. And our two melodies, our counterpoint and our cantus firmus, need to form consonances completely. Everything has to be consonant. That's how first species works. So every single interval has to be consonant. Our endings, you have to get used to this. This is how it's always going to be. You're going to have a T to do or a Re to do ending. That's scale degree 7 to 1 or 2 to 1. Put them together and you either have T to do and Re to do forming a sixth that spreads out to an octave, or if you have the T to do underneath and the Re to do on top, you have a third squishing into a unison. Those are our typical ways for counterpoints to close. It's possible that this could be a 10th closing into an octave, but it's not really feasible that this would be a 13th spreading out to a 15th. Because that would make your lines too far apart, right? So we don't want to do that. We want them to be within an octave or a 10th kind of at most from each other. Okay. No similar motion to a perfect interval. That's the more verbose way to say no parallel fifths, and no similar fifths or octaves. And we talked about that last time again. So let's jump right in. That's enough on the rules. Again, instead of basing things off rules, what I'm trying to do is base things more off our values, which are independence and variety. So here's our first species counterpoint we wrote above Fuchs's Dorian cantus firmus. We took it not in Dorian, but in just plain old D minor. And here's how that cantus firmus sounds. And we wrote this counterpoint, above it. And you put them together, you get... And that, my friends, is counterpoint. So now we're going to do one below, and I'm just going to show you, this is a typical way that we like to write counterpoints. Even though we're not writing three voices that all work together, just as kind of a way to save paper, we like to write the counterpoint above, and then we write the counterpoint below, just to take up three stabs. It's just always been how counterpoint's done. You can kind of think about like the olden days when paper and ink were harder to come by, or like more expensive, or more of a pain because maybe you had to draw your own staff lines. I'm not sure. It's just how we do it. But you have to know we're not trying to play them all three together. We might get into three voice counterpoint, but it has some new different kind of rules and practices. So just know, even though this looks like three voices, we're just talking about either these two voices or these two voices. And today, it's the middle one and the bottom one. It's a two-voice exercise, and we're gonna write a counterpoint. So we're gonna just extend our ending bar line, and we're gonna get started. And like I always say, best place to start a counterpoint is actually the ending. The ending is the most conventionalized, and so let's talk about how to pick our end note. So we know we have to end on tonic, so we could end on the same D. We could end on the D below. And when you're trying to decide, oftentimes if you just look at how the cantus firmus looks, you can decide really easily. Like here, the cantus firmus starts on D, and see how it makes this overall kind of arch shape. It goes up and back down. So if we started on a D way down here, we would either have to have the same kind of melody to stay within an octave or so, that is, go up and back down. That's not great for variety. Or if we had ours kind of go down instead of up or something, they'd get too far apart. And while that does make there be independence, it's too much. We need our voices to like have a steady relationship to one another that is closer than that. Okay, so I think instead we should start and end on this D, the same D that the cantus firmus starts on, and have our melody kind of trend downwards and back up. So we're looking for one anticlimax. So here's our last note. That's a unison, so I can't really fit that one underneath there, so I'm just going to put it off to the side. That's okay. Notice I'm using bass clef. I think I mentioned last time, a lot of times this is where you'll learn about your C clefs. And that's one reason C clefs kind of work better for counterpoint, is it keeps you away from ledger lines, so you don't have this kind of problem. But I'm trying to simplify things, so we're just going to use our good old treble and bass clefs. So we ended on the same D, and we already have a re to do, so this one has to be T to do. So here's our T. So there's our ending. It's a third to an octave. A third to a unison. Really normal ending. So far, we have something like... It's kind of funny to just play the one note. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. We're going to start on the same D. We already decided that, and that's a unison. I'll just squeeze it in there. All right, let's make some decisions. Again, always work in pencil. Your eraser is your best friend. I guarantee you what you're seeing now is me writing in pen, but I erased a lot when I was planning this counterpoint out so that I could do it. For you, write in pencil. And for me, when I'm not making a video, write in pencil. Always write in pencil. Okay. Now, my second note, I'm actually just going to jump down to sol, just like I did in my counterpoint above. Brings up a nice tangent. There's a thing we call invertible counterpoint. I never remember if that's an I or an A right there. Invertible? Invertible? I don't know. Either way, it just means counterpoint where you could take the thing you wrote up here, maybe pop it down an octave, and it would still work. It's a whole separate kind of realm of counterpoint. It's a lot harder to do. Our melody wouldn't work. You can tell just by looking, it has a fifth, and if we inverted that, it would become a fourth. A fourth is dissonant. We can't have dissonances. Anyhow, just so you know, usually it's not going to work to just take your above counterpoint and change it to a different register. Usually you're going to have to write a brand new counterpoint, or pretty much always. Okay, anyhow, we got a do to a sol. Now, I always like to look what happens if I go up and if I go down. I could come up to a B flat, and that would form a dissonance. It would form a fourth, and I can't do that. So I'm going to go down. I had this sixth, and this is going to be another sixth. So, all right. At some point I want to come back up, but I can't come up here again, not by step anyhow, because I'll land on an A. That would form a fourth. I could try and come up to the B flat. That could kind of work, but I'm just going to do one more sixth instead. Now notice 3 sixths in a row. I usually cut myself off after that many. And I'm going to do that today. I'm just going to continue down so that these voices can have more independence, right? Right now they seem kind of locked together. You could almost imagine I just keep staying in these sixths. Which is fine. It doesn't sound bad. It just doesn't have the independence we need. So E to G, that forms a 10th. That's about as far apart as you want your voices to get. So we're fine for now. We just don't want them to get much further apart. So to that end, I'm going to leap back up. I'm going to leap up to a nice, good sixth again. I like sixths. We love sixths, we love thirds, we even love tenths. Let's see how it sounds so far. Love it. Now, I want to do a thing that we love in music theory for some reason. See how this F goes to A? And I'm on an A here. I'm going to go down to an F. We call this voice exchange. It's kind of a weird word for it. I'll write it down here. Voice exchange just means when, you know, like note 1 goes to note 2 in one voice, and then note 2 goes to note 1 in the other voice. Basically, it's kind of a oversimplified description. It's great because it keeps us out of voice leading trouble. We're moving in contrary motion. We know we're going to have independence, and it just sounds nice. Check it out. Right? Little voice exchange. Now look, we're already to where we just have to kind of stitch it together. Now, I have noticed one weakness of this melody so far. We don't have a single perfect interval. So like I said, sometimes it's hard to squeeze one in that isn't at the beginning or end, but you want to, and we can get one right now. We can step up to this octave. Now, anytime you write an 8 or a 5 or a 1 in between your stabs, anytime you write a perfect interval, that's when you want to look back and make sure you didn't get there in similar motion. And in this case, we didn't, so we're cool. And I can just step up again, A to F to the sixth, and then that links everything together. So let's check them out. Beautiful. So one thing I like to do to measure whether I wrote a quote-unquote good melody is just try to see if it's singable. Every species counterpoint melody should be singable. I sing with movable do, so to me this will sound like do, sol, fa, me, re, sol, me, fa, sol, ti, do. Right? Pretty graceful, pretty easy to sing. Just, you know, I'm a music theory teacher and I can't help but be nitpicky, so I'm going to be nitpicky with myself. Weaknesses with this melody, it sure does hammer on a lot of sixths, right? When I played the fake version that was all sixths, oops, I had a B natural in there. It doesn't sound that different from how the actual written version sounds. So that's not the most variety, right? And I only have the one perfect interval. I also feel like a lot of the leaps happen at the same time, right? This skipped up, this leaps down. Here they're different. This one leaps up and this one steps down. And then here's one where it's different. But then here they both leap. Even though it's nice because it's voice exchange, it kind of fiddles with the independence. Like I feel like from this point on, these voices kind of link up. I don't know. Do you hear that? I also don't love this hole here where we're going up by step and then we suddenly go more. Some people have a thing they call a gravity rule. And in a gravity rule, if you're going up by step and then suddenly you leap, that seems like it kind of defies gravity, right? So when we're talking about a gravity rule, if we're going to leap, we want to leap and then step. These are the kind of rules I'm trying to leave out because I'm trying to stick to these values instead. But it does still bug me a tiny bit. It's not perfect. I wanted to make sure I did a not perfect one because sometimes you can't. I can't figure out how to do a perfect first species below to this particular cantus firmus. And you should remember, all the counterpoint rules are kind of rules of thumb. Some of them you have to follow really hard, but like some of the independence and variety stuff, do your best. You struggle with it, and that's kind of how counterpoint is good for you. It's like exercising. exercising your musical brain. All right, we'll get to second species next week. Bye.